Hello, Vivek. Welcome to Be Fearless podcast.
Thank you so much.
We're going to do a small fire chat about what is SquareX and what does it do. So can you tell us more about SquareX?
SquareX helps detect, mitigate, and threat hunt web attacks which are happening against your employees in the enterprise. And all of this in real time. So that's the very short summary. If I were to kind of lengthen that up, what SquareX does is, at this point in time, your employees are spending 90% of all their work life on the web browser. Whether it is accessing internal portals, SaaS websites, or external third-party websites. And that is really where attackers have taken notice. And when your employees are online on the browser, that is really where attackers try to, attack your enterprise via, spear phishing attacks, session hijacking attacks, identity stealing, and whatnot. So what SquareX does is we have a browser extension which can be deployed in any browser in a matter of seconds. And that browser extension constantly monitors what is happening in the browser DOM. DOM stands for Document Object Model. And what that really is when a page opens, the browser represents that page in a hierarchical tree which keeps changing. So we monitor it, we monitor browser events, we monitor user interactivity, and combining all of those, we run machine learning algorithms entirely in the browser using WebAssembly. And based upon that, we do attack detection. And once we detect, depending on the enterprise policy, we can either outright block it or isolate those workflows.
Wow. Yeah, it seems like SquareX can do a lot with its product. Can you tell us some more of your use cases that you try to solve?
Yeah. So what SquareX does is we have the ability to inspect and monitor any web workflow which is happening within the browser when your employees are online and doing their regular work, or for what it's worth, even chatting away on social networking websites or their own Gmail or whatnot. So this brings up a lot of interesting use cases, primarily because in today's hybrid work, you have employees using the same laptop for accessing both enterprise as well as personal resources online. So here's one example use case. One of the organizations came to us and they said, our employees are logged into their Google Workspace and their personal Gmail both at the same time. So now when they try to upload a document, the URL is drive.google.com. And because of that, they may inadvertently end up uploading a company file into a personal account. So is this something you can protect against? Now, because SquareX runs within the browser, we know the user's identity when they interact with any website for that matter. So when a file upload happens, we can immediately figure out that in this tab where the upload is happening, the identity of the user is his personal identity, his personal Gmail, and not the office identity. Based upon that, we can immediately go about blocking it. So this was one interesting use case. The second use case which came up was attackers use well-known websites like SharePoint to create subdomains. And on those websites, they end up going ahead and embedding documents and give people links to click and download. Now, when someone ends up clicking that, they end up going to a form which looks identical to your Microsoft login. And that actually becomes a spear phishing page where, a few of your employees may inadvertently enter the credentials for the company account. And of course, when that happens, you lose keys to the kingdom. Attackers manage to get all of that. So what SquareX can do there is we can go ahead and deploy a policy where there are only certain whitelisted SharePoint subdomains, and everything else is treated as untrusted. And you can apply a granular policy where it says if any link originates from one of these untrusted subdomain SharePoints, then when any of your user ends up clicking on it, you will not allow them to fill up any data, including their credentials. So with SquareX enabled, if an attacker were to send this to somebody, they would end up still going to that subdomain SharePoint, clicking. But the moment any page opens up with a form or they try to type, we block that workflow, report it back to the admin. So this is another use case where SquareX helps. The third one is Gen AI DLP. So I think what's been happening is everyone wants to use generative AI, and there are new websites cropping up every single day. And organizations are very afraid that what happens if employees end up copy pasting, confidential data into these applications, also uploading files as well. Because, hey, somebody told you to write a report and, you use ChatGPT by uploading the raw confidential document in it and telling it to summarize, right? So where SquareX can help here is you can deploy a policy where you can tell that, hey, when it comes to ChatGPT and other such applications, clipboard copy pasting is blocked, and at the very same time, file uploads are blocked. So when you do that, now an employee would have to seek permission, seek an exception, and only then would they be allowed to do it. Now, this is, of course, people uploading data. The other is what happens in cases where your developers are probably using ChatGPT to generate source code and adding it to your products, right? There could be some major copyright violations. And this is really where you can also apply to that workflow, where you say, hey, if any code or anything is generated in one or more of these applications, block copying it out of that application. So maybe your developers can still look at it from the perspective of looking and learning, but they can't copy it as is, into your enterprise source code database, creating possible copyright problems. Another use case is, let's say, you are receiving documents and some of those documents may have macros in it. So macros sometimes can be malicious. And when there is malicious macros, somebody downloads it, opens it up, they get infected, the machine gets compromised, all hell breaks loose. Now, unfortunately, traditional security solutions like EDRs, the most that they can do is if they detect something is malicious, they will block it. But there are borderline cases where something could just be suspicious but not malicious. So what SquareX can do is, depending upon the threat and risk level that you're willing to have an appetite for, you could set up a policy which says, go ahead, isolate all Office documents which may have macros. So now when any of your employees tries to download this via webmail or a third-party website, SquareX's solution can immediately figure out if this has a macro or not. If it doesn't, it'll allow the download as is. If it has a macro, it'll go ahead and only allow you to open it up in one of our disposable file viewers in the cloud. So this way, even if something did go wrong, it's going to happen in our disposable environment. And these environments are absolutely watertight and custom built exactly for these use cases. So even if malware detonates, it's inside that jailed up, isolated container in the cloud within SquareX's cloud infrastructure, and that can do you no harm.
Very interesting. It seems to be a lot of use cases. I think you can go on and on and on. I think what's good about SquareX is that you can pretty much tailor your solution to whatever customer is required. And I think problem really differs one from another. But so then the follow-up question would be, what's the early user feedback that you received so far?
I think we've started deploying pilots and we're starting to talk to so many large organizations. And I think the feedback has been phenomenally good. I feel what happens is any time that you come out with a disruptive product, people don't even know something like that exists or can exist. So most of the time, the first response I get is that of awe. Oh, we could actually do that. And I was like, yes, you can do that. Oh, could we do this? And I'm like, absolutely, you can do that as well. So I think, in those conversations, people are very surprised that this was something which was available and they could have put to use a long time back. But unfortunately, something they don't know about. So usually starts off with those discussions. And then what I do is, try to make it real, right? Because of course, in a conversation, any vendor may agree to pretty much anything that the client says he wants. Mm-hmm. So what I typically do is in the very first conversation, go through use cases, ask them what is their concerns, what are their priorities. And then I tell them that I'm going to set up a demo where within the product, I'm going to address exactly the use cases that we discussed over the first call. And then they can see that working. I feel like generally once that happens and they, see it in real, I mean, it starts to demystify and almost in a sense gets their kind of gears rolling, because then they come up with a lot of other interesting use cases and say, oh, you know what, maybe I could also do this and also do that. So that has been amazing from SquareX's perspective so far.
I heard that this August you're going to be at Black Hat and DEF CON. So tell us more. What are your plans? What you're going to present?
Yeah, so I mean, Black Hat DEF CON collectively, the whole world calls it, Hacker Summer Camp. And rightfully so. I think between both conferences, there's going to be over 50 to 60,000 cybersecurity, IT folks, hackers who are actually going to be there. So at Black Hat, SquareX has a booth, and where we plan to show people what we are building. We are hoping to meet CISOs, heads of security, talk about interesting problems that they have, show them how we solve it. So that's the main plan for Black Hat. And I think, if you're watching and you're going to be there, make sure to come to our booth. We will have a couple of interesting freebies that we plan to give, including a hacker comic that I've written. At DEF CON, it starts to get a little bit more interesting from a security research standpoint. So SquareX has worked extensively on looking at existing solutions like secure web gateways. And secure web gateways are part of SASE and SSE, where primarily this is used to filter web traffic, to secure, web traffic from your employees' browsers. So SquareX is putting out groundbreaking research where we are going to show how attackers can completely bypass security controls in secure web gateways when it comes to both malicious files as well as malicious websites. And our hope is that, we really feel this is going to have a massive impact on this industry and force everybody to fundamentally think assumptions that they've made on how they go about protecting, their employees when they're online.
Yeah.
Apart from that, at the exhibition area in DEF CON, we're going to have a podcast set up where we plan to invite a lot of great folks in the cybersecurity community to talk to us. And that is something I'm looking forward to as well.
Super exciting. I think what I like about SquareX is you guys, us guys, constantly researching and producing such groundbreaking research for the rest of the industry.
Right.
A lot of good things are yet to come.
Thank you.
Happy to have you here. Thank you.
Thanks.